police who were supposedly on scene. I've heard everything from 17 to 20-something girls there, the majority of which were 17 years old or younger, and they were drugged up, many of which had been sexually assaulted, and you can just change that term to raped. It was obvious that they were being geared up for sex slavery, and they were being trafficked into the United States. That is a travesty. That is one of the things that's going on with the border, with the porous border. Now, you could sit there and say, well, that's the main thing, like the Border Patrol is trying to stop, is that kind of activity, as well as the gun smuggling and the drug smuggling, and the really nefarious criminal activity. But when you think about it, your average illegal is going to come across the border, and they're going to need documentation in order to get jobs, etc. So what are they going to do? They're going to pay for forged identification, falsified identification, most of which is stolen identities. And that's numerous levels of fraud right there. That's identity theft, that's credit card fraud, that's defrauding the federal government when it comes to the fake Social Security cards, etc., etc., etc. All these are felonies. So these are all felonies that your average illegal alien will end up committing within their first few months of being in the United States. And that's if they come in without being enslaved to some coyote working in the sweatshop or working in the sex slave trade or what have you. So it's not as simple as they came across the border, let them stay. There's so much more involved. And if they really want to go after those who commit criminal acts, almost every single one of them does, simply with the ID theft and the fraud that's involved. Well, that segues us over to, well, of course we got the current crisis going on, but this prompted James O'Keefe of Project Veritas to release another video, and he went down to West Texas area. Looks like it's not too far from the El Paso area, kind of the same area where the border convoy had some of their issues when they entered Texas due to some local pro-illegal immigration, pro-open borders folks decided to kind of interrupt their mobile demonstration. But I've got the audio to James O'Keefe's latest clip. So let's take a listen to kind of what he found, and y'all should go over and look at the Project Veritas website, or go on YouTube and look up the Project Veritas video, because there's some things that you need to actually see on this video that just don't relate with the audio, but the audio itself is pretty compelling. So let's take a listen, folks. Okay. As has happened in the past, we had a little bit of a glitch there. So we'll attempt to get that video up for you again. And in the meantime, we'll talk about something else while we try to get that going on. Folks, one of the things to consider as far as the immigration goes, like I said, you've got the ID theft and the fraud. So you want to talk about Obama's attempt to fix the economy with his pen and his phone, and do these executive orders to grant work permits to these illegal aliens. And a lot of them, like I said, they're doing ID theft and credit card theft already. So if they're doing ID card theft and credit card theft, how is this going to help the economy? It's not. It's ruining the credit rating and the ability to purchase goods and services of our citizens. It's harming the economy. All this credit card theft harms it. You think, well, somebody's paying for it at least. Well, no. That's the thing. Nobody is paying for it. Somebody's getting something for free, because as soon as it pops up, someone's going to, submit their claims, and believe it or not, most people who do credit card theft do not get caught, at least not the first or second time. They have to do it, multiple times before they're finally caught when they set up a routine. And the ones that were smart, they'll use like a single credit card once, dump it, and find another one. Now, by and large, I'm going to bet that many of these illegal immigrants don't fall under that that use it once and get rid of it category. But I am willing to bet that that they're the ones that are going to continue to use it, although they may get caught. It's going to be really hard to prosecute them, because that the first thing they have to do is check their immigration status, and if they're an illegal immigrant, that has to be processed before they can really do any of the other criminal activity. That's kind of the way it works. The federal jurisdiction takes over, and then you have to wait for the feds to then decide how they're going to pursue the case before any local stuff regarding identity theft or credit card fraud or other theft is prosecuted. And that can take years before any kind of a deportation hearing even comes up. And they don't have the room to detain these people for very long. So a lot of times they're just let go. Now, some of them are picked up and dropped off on the other side of the border. They're deported. Some of them are not. Some of them get to sit and do whatever until the time comes. So it's all that kind of stuff to consider in the whole ball of wax. Okay, I just made a second attempt to get that audio up, and it's looking like it just doesn't want to cooperate at this particular moment. So we're going to continue to look at that, folks, but in the meantime, we're going to look for a couple other topics to fill the time. So let's see what else we can consider. If you remember on Friday, folks, I was talking a little bit about I don't remember. I have to go back and look up, but I think I tried to play Dan Joseph's the audio from Dan Joseph's video. But if I remember correctly, I didn't mention it on the show, but Dan Joseph did his latest video. He went inside of an anti-gun protest rally type thing, where a bunch of people were gathered in what appeared to be like a church or something like that, to talk about how evil guns are. And they had their children dressed up in hospital scrubs, like they're doctors and nurses and other hospital workers. And it was to support trying to confirm the new Surgeon General. And confirmation hearings have been kind of on hold for several months now. And chances are that they may or may, it's looking like he's not going to be confirmed. And they're blaming the NRA for the fact that the Surgeon General is not being confirmed. So, because of that, they're thinking that if they go and start taking a bunch of pictures with politicians with their kids dressed up in scrubs, etc., that'll allow them to do what's called moral suasion. In other words, blackmail the politicians into confirming the Surgeon General. Because why do they want the Surgeon General? That's a medical side issue. It's determining health and medical regulations. Well, because this guy is very anti-gun. And he thinks that it is the job of medical workers to do gun control, to sit down and ask your kids, how many guns does mommy and daddy have in the house? And ask you, when you're sitting there checking you out for a shoulder injury or a broken leg, so many guns do you have in your house? It's none of their damn business. But this guy who wants to be Surgeon General, who's been nominated, he thinks it is his business. He thinks it's a health crisis because people get shot, and when they get shot, they have to be treated by doctors. I can almost see his logic, though I don't agree with it. Because that would be like saying a bank robbery is a healthcare issue, because somebody might get shot, or somebody might get run over, or somebody might get panicked into a heart attack. It's not, though. The Surgeon General doesn't have purview over bank robbery. FBI does, but the FBI does not have purview over somebody getting sick with salmonella. That falls under the Surgeon General. Kinda, sorta. That's even up to debate. So, Dan Joseph was very, very good about turning around and flat out asking this one guy who happened to be an MD, well, if somebody comes and tries to conduct gun violence and I'm a concealed carry holder and I pull my gun and I put it in his face, is that not preventive medicine? The guy's like, no, you're convoluting it. Well, kind of blaming guns for bad things that bad people do and calling that a medical issue is also going way off reservation. And I think that was Dan Joseph's point, but the guy just didn't get it. Yeah, so Dan Joseph shot all kinds of holes in his logic, and I know I wrote that up for BuzzPo last week too. So if you haven't seen that video yet, go ahead and swing over to BuzzPo and take a look at that article. So interesting things with that going on. But border issues. Okay, well, folks, I apologize. The James O'Keefe audio just is not coming over. So go over to YouTube and do a look for Veritas videos, which comes from Project Veritas, and it's his latest one. And in the video, James O'Keefe himself walks back and forth across the border several times, including one time dressed up as Osama bin Laden, and nobody stops him. And then he even walks across the border, across the Rio Grande, and up to I-10, which is a 6-mile walk from the border to I-10. Nobody stopping him, nobody interrupting him. Now, granted, he had a camera crew with him, which may have had something to do with it, but the fact that they were able to do this with the camera crew and everything should send some shockwaves up your spine, because while there are a huge fence there, the fence just suddenly stops, and then you have a couple of strands of barbed wire that you can easily move to the side, and that should disturb you. And James O'Keefe shows that area where that barbed wire fence that really isn't much more than a kind of a marker of, hey, cross here. You know, it kind of shows where that is and how easy it is to get through that. So go ahead and go take a look at that. Meanwhile, as I said, I want to talk a little bit about education. There have been a few things that come out in education recently. And this one is kind of near to home, sort of. It's a couple 100 miles away from where I currently reside. But there was a high school principal who is looking at the state level, standardized testing. And it's state level. This is the state of Texas does not use the federal standardized testing. In fact, supposedly, Common Core is illegal in the state. As I said, supposedly. I'm seeing several examples of where that's not the case. But this principal was looking and said, hey, in order to pass, especially the English language activities, the ELA sections of the STAR test, we have a lot of students that are English as a second language students. Well, they need to be a little bit more proficient in order to do a little bit better. So she highly suggested, and she put over the PA, hey, from now on, students and teachers need to encourage the use of proper English and more use of English around the school and inside the classrooms. Nowhere did she forbid the use of any other languages. And nowhere did she say that people who do so are going to be punished. All she did was highly encourage the use of proper English and increasing the use of English until the tests were done to help the kids do better on the tests. Kind of sort of makes sense, doesn't it? Well, a bunch of students and their parents and the school board were outraged. How dare she be so prejudiced against non-English speakers, especially this must deal with the Spanish speakers specifically. So she must be prejudiced against Hispanics. So they suspended her for her strong recommendation and suggestion. Then they put a gag order on her and said, you can't even talk about this. Meanwhile, the other side, the people who were opposed to her policy, were speaking all over the place, calling her prejudiced and saying that she had no right to tell people that Spanish was banned, blah, blah, blah. Nowhere did she ban it, but that was the claim that they were making. Well, finally, the gag order got lifted, and she was able to speak out. And over at BuzzPo, Steve Ale, I want to say, was the author of this one. Yes, it was Steve Ale. I could tell by his writing style. Steve Ale covers what this principal, the principal's name is, I have to look through the article, folks. Amy Lacey, Principal Amy Lacey. Well, she was finally able to speak, and Miss Lacey kind of gave her views and gave her side of the story finally, months and months later, of course, after her name has been besmirched for her allegedly banning Spanish, which was not the truth. What she stated, and she says this is what she puts over the PA. Now, this may have been misunderstood, especially since the kids don't speak English. But she said, I informed students it would be best to speak English in the classrooms to the greatest extent possible in order to help prepare them for the STAR tests. And those are the state-level standardized testing. It is important to note that I did not ban the use of Spanish anywhere in the school or at any time. Teachers had reported to me that they had experienced instances in which students had been asked to stop talking during instruction, and they responded that it was their right to speak Spanish, ignoring the fact that they shouldn't have been speaking in any language during the class without permission. The perception of the teachers was that students were being disrespectful and disrupting learning, and they believed they could get away with it by claiming it was racism. So there you go, folks. That's why Amy Lacey was suspended, because students used her recommendation as an excuse to interrupt class and say, oh, you're being prejudiced because you're not letting me speak Spanish in the middle of the class. No, we're just not supposed to be interrupting class. You're supposed to sit down, close your mouth, open your eyes and open your ears, and if you have a question, raise your hand. So that was the truth of the situation, at least from Amy Lacey's perspective. So go ahead and go over to BuzzPo, and the title of that article, folks, is Gag Order Lifted, Unfairly Fired Principal Speaks Out. So there's some education news, and given that school is starting up soon, folks, you got to pay attention to some of the stuff, get your mind back into it, and get ready, because it's about to start hitting. You have your kids in the public indoctrination centers, otherwise known as public schools, really need to be involved and pay attention to what's going on. You have to remind many of these principals and teachers who their employers are. And that's you, the parents, or we, the parents. So, take my opinion for what it's worth, but really, from my perspective, if you're a decent parent, you're going to be involved. That's your job, to be involved. You shouldn't be turning your kids over to the school to raise your kids for you. They should be educating your kids for you. And it should be up to you to make sure that they're doing so within the manner that you desire. They're your kids, and it's your job to raise your kids. It's not the state's job, regardless of what the state tries to tell you. Meanwhile, over in Fremont, California, there's a latest proposal for their sex ed program for their high school freshmen, and includes a 392-page textbook that they're using called Your Health Today that includes all kinds of interesting